Just a minute ago we were talking about pornography and how accessible it is with computers, phones, new technology.
Easy to get,
Especially with kids these days, they have access to phone. And it's almost seen as strange if a kid doesn't have a phone.
No, that's right. Look, I remember just recently, it was quite funny. Well, it was actually disturbing, it wasn't funny. It was Australians on Porn. It was on ABC. And you had, 80% of the audience, who they were interviewing were pro-porn. Some of them were looking at porn, some of them were actual porn actors. And then I think there were only two that were activists against pornography. And their argument was, look, children, as parents, you need to control what your children watch, You could say, well, hold it, we live in a secular environment, what they watch is their business, but the problem is, because of computers, because of phones, and because every kid's got a phone, accessibility and affordability is unbelievable when it comes to pornography because it's free. So what happens is kids are just looking on their phone. Okay, if a kid's got a phone at school, how does a parent control that? How does a parent, and there are ways of getting around, you can put filters in the home, but there are ways of getting around that. And a lot of parents just don't have the knowledge to be able to protect their children. So it was quite disturbing because the people on the panelists, those that were being interviewed, were just thinking about themselves and the pleasures they get out of pornography, but forgetting how many children that it's affecting in our society. It's easy to get pornography. You just got to type it in. And Google, one of the biggest searches you have today for porn is teen porn. So you can see that young people are engaging. The average age is 12 to 17 years of age. And that's going to have a huge impact on our society when it comes to families, when it comes to having children, and I said this before. So we can't just say, well, it's their problem, you know what I mean? And let's the parents should be responsible, and of course they should be responsible, they should put filters in. But we live in a society where we're bombarded with sexuality. You walk into a newsagent, you turn the television. Look, I turned the television on last night and they had a program on pornography. It was called Pornography and Dance or something like that, or a musical about pornography. It's just there all the time. So to try and stop kids from seeing porn is nearly impossible.
We're kind of setting kids up in a way, especially with media and marketing. We do use sexualization to market, and so that would in a way ingrain certain, I guess, wants and desires.
Absolutely. Well, look,
kind of push them that way.
Of course, you've got a kid 13, 14 years of age, 800% testosterone levels increase, right? Men are visual. Bombard them with sexuality through TV, media. It's going to happen because that's the society we live in. Our morality is lowered. The line in the sand's got further and further back. So what happens is what we allow on TV is very different to what we allowed 10, 15 years ago. And so what happens is that just feeds their testosterone. Because we're natural human beings. We were created to have sex and to desire the opposite sex. So what happens is it's just going to feed it more and more. And especially if you don't have a line in the sand, it's very difficult for an adolescent to work out what's right and wrong, because they've been bombarded from either their parents or from media or from friends on what right and wrong is. They're trying to find out what right and wrong is themselves. Then you bombard them with all this. It's very difficult. And so I think as adults we have a responsibility, but the problem is the adults are saying there's nothing wrong with porn. I've heard adults say it's good for families. It's madness. Because what we're doing is it's all about self-gratification, isn't it? About my desires and my needs, but we're not thinking about the other person. And so, especially if you mix that with porn, in a secular environment that says there is no such thing as morality, we make our own morality up as we go, that then feeds our own desires, where we just do what we want. We don't think about the children, the long-term effects of kids. We ignore the stats, we ignore the science, we ignore the doctors. But we're going to pay the consequences of that in the long run. In the long run, kids are going to suffer because they're going to become adults and they're going to live in dysfunctional relationships. You speak today to young people around they sexually engaged at 15, getting a bit younger to 20 years of age, and speak to the girls and what boys are expecting. The science is there, that the evidence is there, but we're ignoring it because we don't want to know the truth.
I think it also comes down to a lot of parents don't want to talk to their kids about that, or vice versa, the kids don't want to talk to their parents, because it can be quite a an awkward subject.
Absolutely. There are a number of reasons why, and we do a seminar actually, how to talk to kids about sex, but there are a number of reasons why parents don't engage. It could be because of the parents' past, that maybe they were promiscuous and they feel embarrassed about doing it. But I always say, look, if you've taken the log out of your own eye, you can take the twig out of your brother's. So just because you've lived a past that was a bit promiscuous doesn't mean that you can't speak to your children about those issues. But that still is a block for some parents. Some parents are old school where they were never told about the issues about sexuality and they found out for themselves. But we live in a world now where if we don't speak to our children about our sexuality, or not our sexuality, about sexuality and how they're sexual beings, then kids will get that information from school, from friends, from the internet, from the media, TV, whatever, magazines, and that can be misinformation, and that is incredibly dangerous. A kid thinks, well, a woman likes getting choked while she's having sex because that's in pornography movies. That's who's educating our young people, where we need to say, hold it a second, that's a movie. Those people don't like getting choked. In some cases they're being raped, and in other cases they're not because they're paid for it. You don't know, you can't distinguish between who's getting raped and who's not. But from the kid's point of view, that's what they see, and the woman doesn't complain, so they assume, well, that's okay. It would be madness for a parent not to speak to the kids. And there are many books and professional psychologists that have written, Christian or non-Christian, that have written times to engage with their children about when to start to speak to them about sexuality, especially when it comes to safety. With the issues of pedophilia we have today, kids need to know what's private and what's not private. They need to, the kid's name, we don't say we should say that is your vagina, because kids need to be able to tell their mum or dad, somebody touched me on the vagina. Do you know what I mean? That's very, very important that they have actual names. Yeah. And unfortunately, us engaging with young kids, and when we start to speak to them about their sexuality is getting younger and younger because we're bombarded every day. Look, it's tragic what's happening in our society today. But again, I think one of the big issues is there's no line in the sand anymore. So accessibility, very easy. You just Google sex, you can get anything, and you'd be horrified to see what type of sex people are actually Googling for. It's too R-rated to even put on a camera. But that's how perverted we live in, a perverted world. And affordability, it's free. And if you do want really hardcore stuff, that's how they get you in. It's like giving a little bit of dope, and then it's like that gateway drug to get you onto heroin or cocaine or whatever. So they feed you a little bit of free porn, but to get the real stuff you've got to pay. And that's where they get you, And look, governments are making billions of dollars through tax. So again, it's the motivation behind trying to stop this, because in some countries they simply don't have it. It's very hard to get porn in some countries. Yeah.
I've heard that the pornography industry is bigger than the gaming industry in terms of.
Yeah, well, they say it's under. I think the next biggest thing is drugs or gun running. I'm not too sure. There's mixed views there, but it comes under that. It's a billions of dollar industry. They make a lot of money, not only from the movies, but from the internet, a number of sources where they actually make. Prostitution is also huge as well.
Media has changed. What we accept as okay now, or PG rated,
it's very different.
It was different in the past. But we do have rating systems, and so I could imagine that some people would say disagree with you on some points and say that whilst pornography is bad for children, that it's okay for adults if they're over that 18.
No, I agree. Look, it comes down to a morality thing. Let's pretend I'm 25 years of age. I'm in the peak of my sexuality, maybe. I'm not too sure. I've forgotten. I'm 51 now, so that's past my time. But anyway, and I've got a girlfriend, or I'm married at 25 years of age. We're sexually active, and we both enjoy sex, right? And we put on the screen, get a YouTube clip up, or put on a movie, or go onto an internet site, and we look at porn together. That can certainly be argued. What's wrong with that? Now, I could try and argue it, and I think I can, but from a secular perspective, if I'm not a Christian and I determine what right and wrong is, there is nothing wrong with that. The question I would ask them is, how do you know what you're looking at? Is that somebody that's in the porn industry because they want to be, or is that somebody that's been kidnapped from another country that's underage? How do you determine, just because it says, hi, my name's Jenny and I love doing what I'm doing and I hope you get off on me? How do you really know? That's the producer if you buy a DVD. How do you really know what you're watching? And looking at a documentary just recently, the porn industry, as far as DVDs, is dying. You know, porn stars used to get a lot of money and they would become porn stars, like Roxy, for instance, was a porn star that everyone knew about. But because of mobile phones, people are doing their own porn. And it's just cheap porn in the sense of it's not regulated and it's not done in a professional establishment, and people are looking at that. So that's the sort of porn that we're seeing. You know, the days of the DVDs aren't as successful anymore. They realise that. You know, this producer was saying it's a dying art, really. There's no such thing as a superstar in the porn industry because everyone's doing porn. The problem is, how do you regulate it? So what happens is, you could have somebody that's been kidnapped, and we know the sex slave industry is huge, and stats say 45%, if you believe the stats, of those people that have been kidnapped into the sex slave market are used in pornographic movies, or they're put into prostitution, made heroin addicts that feed their appetites. They need to stay as a prostitute. A lot of them end up in pornographic movies and they're play acting, so what you're seeing isn't real. So how do you know what you're watching? So you get a 25-year-old with his girlfriend sitting down getting off on a screen. Now you're deriving pleasure possibly from someone that's being raped. Now, even from a secular perspective, how do you ethically justify that? You simply can't. Now I understand that two people, now I have a moral stance, and I believe that when you stand in front of your partner and you're going to get married, or you're involved in a relationship, it's about commitment and some form of faithfulness. Is that really being faithful to the person that you're supposed to be committed to? Even as a non-Christian, I can't see how you would argue that. That's not being faithful, because you're deriving pleasure out of someone else. But again, if you don't have a morality, if you don't have a line in the sand, then anything is permissible. Then how do you argue that? How do you argue with someone that says, well, that's your view, that's your opinion, I want to do that? I had a young kid say to me in year 10, in front of 300 students, there is nothing wrong with pornography, and that was after I said, how do you know what you're looking at?